أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد والثناء لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining our second session on Introduction to Traditional Logic. So for those of you who have made it to the second session, congratulations, and hopefully I'll see you in the third session as well. Inshallah, today it will get a little bit more interesting and a lot more practical than last week. And last week, by its very nature, if you remember, and if you recall, the discussion was concerning the section of concepts and conceptions, which is, primarily a theoretical discussion as opposed to what we're going to do today. So let me just quickly recall and recap what we did last week. We said that, we have something called concepts, and we have a notion of mafhum. Mafhum is a concept which you have in your mind, and anytime you take that mafhum and you sort of apply it to anything around you in the kharij, in external reality, that's what we call its mistaq, okay, its instance. So if you have a concept of a pen in your mind and you see an actual pen in the kharij, in external reality, you come and you say this is a pen, meaning this is a mistaq of the concept of a pen. Okay, so that was perhaps, that distinction, mafhum and mistaq, was probably one of the important discussions that we covered last time. And then we discussed the relationship between different instances in the kharij. So we said, some instances have tabayun, they're in complete opposition. Stones and humans, for example. Or some of them have partial relationships, and so on and so forth. And then finally, we discussed the concept of defining and definitions. We said, how do we define things? That was the whole initial purpose of concepts. Now, one thing I want to mention on the side, if you recall in the second slide, I believe, or the first slide with any content on it, I said there were some presumptions that are being made within logic. And one of those presumptions, or most of those presumptions, are discussed in epistemology. If you really pay attention to the discussion on concepts altogether, you will realize that it resembles a lot of the discussions that take place in epistemology. Okay, concepts. Okay, what is a concept? Okay, how do we know that the thing that we look at in the external reality, that exact concept is actually coming to our mind? Okay, this is actually an epistemology discussion. Okay, but now before the 20th century, because epistemology was not discussed independently in Islamic philosophy, what happened is these discussions were basically taken care of within logic or within philosophy itself. So epistemology as an independent subject within the realm of Islamic philosophy was developed around the 20th century. Okay, and this is because the rise of epistemology actually came from the West. Why? Because they were the ones who actually began doubting things. They began doubting their own existence even at some points, right? So in response to that, the Islamic philosophers, like Allama Tabatabai and so on after him, Mahdi Ha'iri, these big scholars, philosophers, they began sort of addressing this issue separately, and then eventually it became a separate subject altogether. So that was to do with last week. Inshallah, today we're gonna move on to the second section, which concerns tasdiqat. Okay, what is tasdiqat? One of the titles of the logic that we're learning, okay, traditional logic, is also called propositional logic. Okay, propositional logic. Proposition meaning a sentence, a statement. When you have a couple of concepts put together and you make a judgment with regards to those concepts, that's called a tasdeeq, when you affirm something. Okay, that's affirmations, tasdeeqat. And that's what we're gonna inshallah, discuss today. And by the way, I'm gonna have to take a break in around 15 or so minutes for Fajr, and inshallah, I'll come back after 3 minutes after that. So, just letting you guys know about that. So, inshallah, let's begin with our today's discussion. This is concerning your states of belief. Okay, this slide. When we affirm something, in any proposition, there can be four possible psychological states that you can attain. Okay, four possible psychological states. Sometimes you have a proposition and you say, for example, water is blue. Water is blue. That's a statement you made. It's a judgment and you affirmed something in this statement. And after you sort of conceive of this proposition, the psychological state that you attain is that of certainty, meaning you have yaqeen. Okay? You have yaqeen that the water is blue. Or, although, for example, it's not a real example. Like, you can argue that, is water really blue? Is it a reflection of something? What, so on and so forth. Well, what you see from the ocean, in the ocean, something you see water is blue. Or the sun is, yellow. Again, even though in reality it may not be yellow. But what you're looking at, you're seeing that the sun is yellow or the sky is blue. You're seeing all these things. And you attain a state of certainty, which is a psychological state. By the way, the examples I've given, you realize that in reality, they may not actually be, the water may not actually be blue, or the sun may not actually be yellow, and so on. But as far as your psychological state is concerned, you've attained yaqeen. Okay? Why? Because you're saying my senses were correct and what my senses are seeing are not wrong. This is the type of certainty that you guys have probably been familiar with, more or less. Okay? The fact that you're sitting in front of a laptop or a computer, or if you're using your phone, you know that you are sitting in front of a laptop, or you are sitting in front of, you're using your phone, for example, and you have a psychological state of certainty. This is a certainty that we all are familiar with. We live our life based off of this. I just want to add a sort of a new type of certainty that you may not be sort of very familiar with. And this is the type of certainty that we discuss primarily within philosophy and also in some parts of logic. Okay, logic is actually building you up for this type of certainty, and this certainty is called philosophical certainty. Okay, what do I mean by that? Let's take an example of our day-to-day certainties. Okay, so there is a wall in front of me, or for example, I'm sitting in my living room, and I am certain that if I walk out of my house, if I walk out of my door, an asteroid is not going to fall on my head from the sky. Okay? If I ask you, if you walk out, is an asteroid going to fall on your head and, basically destroy you and your neighborhood? You'll be like, no. Like, you have yaqeen, okay, there's no asteroid that's going to fall on my head. But if I really sort of make you a little bit more, precise with regards to this statement, I'll say, how sure are you? How certain are you? Is it that you have 100% certainty with regards to this proposition, or is it a 99 point, a million nines percent chance that there's not going to be an asteroid? You're going to say that yeah, it's 99.9. But there is this philosophical possibility that an asteroid can actually fall from the skies. There's nothing that is sort of philosophically telling you that that's impossible. Okay? There's nothing that tells you that this is impossible. If you have any questions, by the way, feel free to just type them up, okay? If that is the case, that means you don't actually have philosophical certainty. You just have we call this customary certainty, the certainty that we sort of deal with and we attain more or less every day. We call that sort of customary certainty. In custom, and amongst people, this is the type of certainty they acquire, and this is the type of certainty they live and abide by. But I just wanted to mention that we also have philosophical certainty. And later on, after you do logic and you go into philosophy, that's the type of certainty we primarily care about. Okay? So that was certainty. Then sometimes you have a psychological state which is called speculation. There's different translations for this. Speculation is most commonly used, which is the word dhan. Okay? Dhan is when you have a proposition but you give it more than a 50% chance that is true. Okay, so obviously dhan is going to be, sometimes your dhan can be 80%, 90%, and then sometimes going to be, 60%. The higher your dhan is, so let's just say your dhan is like, 95%. The higher it is, we seem to call it by the term of itminan. Okay, when you have itminan, when you have sort of this, sort of peace of mind that something is true, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's certain. It just means that it's such a high degree of probability that you don't even care about the second, anything not being correct. Yes, customary certainty is 99.9. But look, when we deal with customary certainty in day-to-day life, we call it 100%. Okay, if you ask me if there's a wall in front of me, I'll be like, yes, there's a wall in front of me. How sure are you? I'll be like 100%. There's a wall in front of me. So when we look at it from our, non-philosophical eyes, we're gonna basically even give it a 100% over there. But in philosophy, we won't say it's 100%, because we'll say there's always a rational possibility that my senses may have been wrong. Okay, I may have been mistaken here. Anyways, so speculation is anything less than 100%, and then it has a spectrum between 51 to all the way to 99%. Then you have wahm, okay? Estimation, they sometimes translate it, okay? Wahm is the fact that, for example, you have a sort of you have a speculation, okay? This is not certainty anymore. You have speculation, a type of speculation that, let me give you an example that some of the scholars give. I think even Imam Khomeini has used this example in one of his books. That if God forbid, one of your close family members passes away, okay? They pass away, and let's just say they've kept him or her in, if you're, I don't know, I guess in Bathurst, they must have a place. I know in Al Mahdi, Toronto, they have a place where sometimes they temporarily keep the dead body over there after the ghusl and stuff. And this is a close family member of yours, and we ask you, just spend the night with them in this room. Just sleep, just sleep there on the side, and this dead body will be beside you as well. You have speculation, okay? You have speculation that, look, dead bodies don't generally wake up. Okay? Let's just say that you're 90% sure that dead bodies don't just randomly get up like that. But so this is the speculation that you have. But your psychological state is doing tasdeeq. It's affirming that 10% chance that it might just wake up. Okay? And therefore now your psychological state is that of wahm. It's actually saying that, what, I'm gonna accept and sort of abide with that 10% chance that it might wake up. And you might tell the organizer that, sorry, I don't want to sleep with this dead body, even though it may just be a very close family member of yours. Okay? Which, if they decide to wake, if the dead body wakes up, you should be happy. Alhamdulillah, oh wow, you're actually not dead, you're alive. But no, we're gonna be like, don't wake up, because we're scared for whatever reason. Okay? This is called wahm. This is wahm. And the last one is called shak, doubt, which maybe some of us are accustomed to, especially when we're praying. We have shak. Is it second rakah, third rakah? What's going on? And then you have to go look at the risala, which is some, very complicated rulings. If you have shak between this and this, do this. If you have shak between 3 and 4, do this. And some of the rulings in the Risala say if someone has shak between, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you're just thinking, who has these doubts? But people do actually. This is basically you having a proposition, okay, but you are sort of indifferent to it. You're 50-50. You don't know is it is it speculation? Is it waham? What's going on? So your psychological state with respects to a proposition, okay, a belief, is 50-50. You don't know if it's which way it is. Okay? For example, I say, God exists. That's a proposition. Your psychological state with respects to that is 50-50. It's like, I don't know if it's actually true or not. I can't even say if it's speculation. Maybe it's true. No, it's just shock. It's 50%. You don't know. Okay. Now, this is really important. This division is important. Then there are discussions, more detailed discussions. Okay, waham and shak is not really ilm. It's not knowledge. Ilm is, yaqeen and lan. But this is being based on our definition of ilm that we did in the beginning of last week, where we said ilm, for our purposes, is only a mental image. Okay, it's only a mental image. Otherwise, waham is actually jahal. It's actually it's jahal, because you're saying the 10%, which is the body's going to wake up. That's not knowledge in our sense of the way we use it normally. You're actually ignorant with regards to the fact that a dead body won't get up. But the way we defined it in the first session, where we said knowledge is being defined as a mental image, all of these fall into that definition of ilm. Okay. So now we're gonna discuss what propositions are. I strongly suggest that if you haven't already, keep a paper and pen beside you, because we're gonna do a bit of practice today. I want to try to keep it a little bit more interactive this time, and the next week is going to be very interactive. What is a proposition? Okay, a qadiyya in Arabic it's called. Proposition is a complete compound phrase which can be attributed to truth or falsehood. If you recall, last week we divided a statement into complete and incomplete. We said an incomplete statement or a proposition is any statement which it is not appropriate for you to remain silent on. If I say Ali went to, you're going to be like, okay, Ali went where? Where did he go? You didn't finish your sentence. Okay, so incomplete statements are not considered propositions. So it has to be a complete statement. Now, even within that complete statement, we said that sometimes you have a statement which is a khabar, okay, and sometimes you have a statement which is insha. So if you look over here in the definition of a proposition, I said it's a compound phrase which can be attributed to truth or falsehood. Meaning, we said that khabar is that proposition which is attributed to truth or false. So if I say Ali is a student, you can actually look at this proposition and say this is true or this is false. But if I say, wake up or stand up, or if I say Ya Muhammad, these are statements, okay, but they're insha. They're not, you can't attribute them to truth or false. You can't say Ya Muhammad, say yeah, that's true. Or if I say stand up, I gave you a command and you reply back to me saying no, that's false. I'll be like, what do you mean that's false? I never gave you a khabar. I'm telling you to stand up. So because of that, a qadiyya is basically a khabar. That same division if you guys have the slides from last week, so you can look at that division I made, the chart. A qadiyya is basically a khabar. That's all it is. Okay, that's all you need to know for this slide. And this division, I'm gonna get these components so you can see subject and predicate and copula. We'll get back to that in a different slide again, inshallah. Okay, so just know that. Now, So this is where it's going to start. Okay, now the divisions and all that. So just be ready over here. Sometimes, okay, there's two types of propositions. Okay, there's two types of propositions. Sometimes you have a proposition where you are basically claiming the existence of one thing for another, or you're negating it. Okay, what do I mean by that? You're attributing basically something for something else. If I say Ali is tall, what am I doing here? I'm trying to attribute the quality of tallness to Ali, who is my subject. Okay? My subject here is Ali, and what I'm predicating or attributing to him is the concept of tallness. That's a proposition which is called hamliya. Okay? Because in Arabic, haml means to predicate something, to basically carry upon something, okay, something else, or attribute something. Now, look at some because of this, why this logic is also called propositional logic. So we're going to be dealing with propositions now. So an example I've written is iron is a mineral. So why is this attributed? What am I doing over here? What I'm doing here is that I'm taking the quality of being mineral and I'm attributing or predicating it on my subject, which is iron. Okay? So I'm claiming the existence of being mineral for another thing, which is iron. Likewise, if I say interest is prohibited, what I'm doing is I'm taking the quality of prohibition, haram, and I'm saying interest has this quality. Likewise, truth is praise. These are all sort of, I'm claiming their existence. So sometimes I negate it. Okay, I say a liar is not entrusted. You cannot entrust a liar with something. So now I'm taking the sort of what I did over here is I took the concept of entrusted and I negated that from someone who is a liar, who is my subject over here. Sometimes I negate it and sometimes I attribute it to it. Now, keep this division in mind. Then you have a second type of proposition. This proposition, I'm just gonna explain it, but all of its rules and it has further divisions and all that, we're not gonna discuss it in our class because it's an introduction class, and otherwise we'll get too complicated. Two boxes because the first one is the definition, second one are examples for it. The top box is the definition, second box are the example propositions. Okay. A second type of proposition is that when you have that proposition, we judge the existence or the lack of existence of a relationship between sort of two propositions. It's called a conditional proposition. Now let's look at these examples. The example is, when the sun shines, then the day exists. What you truly have here is two propositions, okay? One proposition says the sun shines. You have two attributive propositions. The sun shines. Okay? Then you have a second attributive proposition which says the day exists. And what you've done is you've taken these two propositions, attributive propositions, and you've put conditions on it. You say, when the sun shines, then it is day. So what have you done? You've made the second attributive proposition, which was, the day exists. You've now made it sort of dependent on the first proposition, which is the day shine, when the sun shines. And you have now added a sort of a conditional relationship between these two propositions. The day only exists when you have the sun. Or, for example, I may say an expression is either a single word or a compound word. Okay? Or in this example would be a number is either even or odd. This is also a conditional statement. A number is either even or odd. 2 is either even or odd. Or this third one is a statement which is negating a relationship. It says it is not such that a human is either a writer or a poet. Okay, someone says a human is only either a writer or a poet. I can say no. It is not such that a human is either a writer or either a poet. That's also a conditional statement. Okay, I'm going to take a 3-minute break, inshallah. Let me just pray, and then I'll get back. Just think about this slide. If there's any questions, just leave them in the chat, and I'll come back in 3-4 minutes, inshallah. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Okay. Please show previous slide. This was the previous slide. If your concern was the subject and the predicate, inshallah we'll get to that in another slide. I want to explain the different components of it. Okay. So this slide we're going to ignore because, as I said, we're not going to discuss too much on the conditional propositions. because each of these has divisions, and then each of these also has like, other divisions. Doesn't matter too much for our purpose. Okay. Now, every proposition, okay, whether it's conditional or attributive, there's one more sort of division that you can do about for each of them, whether they're attributive or whether they're conditional. And that is that each of them can be divided into negative and affirmative. Okay? Meaning sort of positive and negative, you can say. In what sense? In the sense that sometimes you have a statement where you affirm and attribute a quality or existence of something for something else, or sometimes you negate it. Very simple. So, example of a case where you affirm something is when I say Ali is a student. What is indicating this affirmation? The word is. Okay, Ali is a student. Or in a conditional proposition, I will say, if it rains, the ground will get wet. Okay? The term is and the term will are indicating that this is a positive and affirmative statement. And in other cases, it's a negation. If I say Ali is not a student, or if I say if it rains, the ground will not get wet. These are statements which are negative. Okay, they're negation. I'm negating the quality of a student being a student for my subject, which is Ali, and I'm negating the relationship of the ground getting wet with the fact that if it rains, the ground won't get wet. So let's look at these 4 examples that I have at the bottom. If it doesn't rain, the ground will get dry. Negative. Okay. So type your answers in the chat. If it doesn't rain, the ground will get dry. Are these affirmative or negative or negative? Affirmative. Okay, so conditional is correct. It's correct that it's conditional. What we're saying here is that every conditional and then every attributive proposition can further be divided into positive and negative, affirmative and negative. A conditional statement can either be affirmative or it can either be a negative. And likewise, every attributive proposition can either be affirmative or it can be negative. So this first example where we said if it doesn't rain, the ground will get wet, negated. Okay. So the answer is actually affirmative. The reason why some of the members have said negative is because they probably got confused with the first part of the statement, which says if it doesn't rain. The way we tell if something is negative or affirmative is with the relationship between the 2 propositions. Okay? Does the getting dry of the ground, what is its relationship with the first part of the statement that if it doesn't rain? We say it's affirmative. Why? Because of the word will. The ground will get dry. Okay? So we say if it doesn't rain, the ground will get dry. That will is actually what and how we figure out if it's affirmative or if it's a negative. If it doesn't rain, that's not negative. Like that in a conditional proposition. That's not what we're concerned with over here. In order to describe a conditional proposition as negative, is the relationship between the 2 propositions. We say the ground will get dry in this case. Okay, so we are giving it a affirmation. We're affirming it. We're saying yes, the quality of being dry is related to the fact that it doesn't rain. Okay, second example is Ali is unmarried. No, so it's not negative. It's not negative. That's why by the way, this is why I put these examples, because I knew it would confuse a couple of people. It's okay. Why is it not negative? Okay, the better question is, why did you guys think it's negative? Yes, we are affirming that he is unmarried. You're actually answering the question, right? We are affirming that he is unmarried. The unmarried doesn't have anything to do with positive or negative. We're trying to see, is the quality of being unmarried being affirmed for Ali, or is it being negated from Ali? Yes, if we said Ali is not married, then that would be negative. Okay, if we said Ali is not married, then that would be a negative. Why? Because then we're negating the quality of being married from Ali. But in this case, we're not negating. I mean, technically, we're negating the quality of being married, but remember the discussion of dalala that we did, signification, and we said one of the signification was through association, where I said, bring me a cup of tea, and then by its association, you should also bring me a spoon and a sugar. So from saying Ali is unmarried, we go through this. It signifies through association or through necessitation that Ali is not married. It also necessitates that proposition. But we're not worried about that right now. We're just looking at this specific proposition where we're saying Ali is unmarried. Okay, this one may be a little tricky. A number is either not even or not odd. No, it's not negative. Just focus on that link, okay? Is, will not, is not, can't. Those are the things that relay and convey the notion of affirming and negating, not the actual, subject and predicate. Yes, it's conditional. We know that's good. Like, it's good that you know it's conditional. But a conditional statement itself can be negative or positive. Okay, so we know, yes, this is a conditional statement, but is this conditional statement affirming something, or is it negating something? Through the link between the two sides of the proposition. Okay? A number it is either not even or not odd. Okay? Ali is unmarried. If it doesn't rain, the ground will get wet. Those will, is not, those are the things that you should be looking at. Okay? So yes, a number is either not even or not odd is affirmative. It is affirming the quality of a number either being not even or not odd. Okay? Not even meaning that it's either odd. Basically, this is saying a number is either odd or even. That's basically what it's saying. But I just confused you guys by putting the word not even or not odd. Okay, last one is a human is not either a chair or a cow. No, so it's not affirmative. For those of you who said it's negative, that's correct. Because what are you doing with the concept of chair and a cow with regards to the human? Are we saying that a human is either a chair or a cow, or are we saying it's not either a chair or a cow? We're trying to say that it's not. A human is not either a chair or a cow. Someone can come and say to you, a human is either a chair or it's either a cow. Okay, you can respond back to them and say, no, it's not either a chair or a cow. Who's telling you this? Over there, we're negating the concept of being a chair or a cow from a human. So try to focus on these terms. Okay, is not, will not, can't, can. These terms will convey the concept of being affirmative or negative. Okay. Inshallah, there's a lot more examples coming up, so don't worry. Components of a proposition. This is, I think after you do this, the previous slide will make a little bit more sense. How do we tell if it's negative or positive? Through the nisbah, through the copula of a statement. Okay. In an attributive proposition, you have something called a subject. Okay. In this example, I've written Ali. And then you have a predicate, or that thing that you are attributing on the subject. That thing that which you're predicating on the subject. Okay. And then you have a copula, a nisbat, right? The relationship, basically. What is the relationship between the predicate and the subject? How do we convey this relationship? By putting in the word is or is not. That's one way of putting it, right? There may be other ways of saying it as well. As long as it conveys the nisbah, as long as it conveys the relationship. Okay, the best easy example is through is or is not. When this nisbah is positive, then we say it's attribute, it's affirming. And when it's negative, then we say it's negative. Okay, Ali is a student. The relationship between the predicate and the subject is affirmative. Why? Because it says is. The nisbah is. It's affirming the notion of being a student for Ali. If I said Ali is not a student, then the nisbah is of negation. We're negating the concept of being a student from Ali. So you have subject, you have a predicate, and you have a copula, the actual nisbah, the actual relationship between the predicate and the subject. Okay, is this slide specifically clear, or if there's any confusion on this specific slide? If it's clear, just let me know. If you're still processing it, that's fine. I can wait a little bit. So if you have a paper pen, write this down, because you're going to need this in the next slides. Yes, both examples that are written on this slide are affirmative. Okay. The second one is for a conditional proposition. So is or is not. Yes. Basically, the is or is not is the deciding factor. But sometimes when we speak, we may not always be saying is or is not. When we speak, we are making some pretty big statements sometimes, and we may indicate the relationship through some other word. It doesn't always have to be through is, but that's what it is at its basic level, right? Even if we don't use the word is, when you start sort of opening it up and digging deep, at the end of the day, what the person will be saying is the word is. Okay, but yeah, that's the deciding factor. And why is that deciding factor? Because that's the nisbah. That's what's giving and indicating the relationship between the predicate and the subject. Likewise, in a conditional statement, which I said we won't focus on too much, but as an example, if it rains, okay, that's your premise. If it rains, the ground will get wet. Okay, the ground will get wet, and the word will is indicating that relationship between the consequent, the ground getting wet, that's your consequent, and it's telling you that the relationship between this with the premise is affirmative. How do we know that? Because it says will. But because we said we're not going to focus too much on the conditional proposition because it has so many other divisions, Uh, it's enough. This is enough for this. Okay. Next slide is going to be the whole summary of what we did so far. We said we have a proposition, which we said has to be a khabar. Okay, it has to be a khabar. It can't be an insha. It can be a command tense. It can be a dua. It can be, a nida saying Ya Muhammad, Ya Ali. It can't be any of those. Okay, it has to be a khabar, where you're giving a statement, which can be attributed to truth or false. Now, these statements are either attributive, okay, they're hamliya, meaning you attribute or you basically talk about the existence of the predicate for the subject, okay, and that itself is divided into two. Either you affirm it or you negate it. Either you say Ali is a student or you say Ali is not a student. You negate it. And then likewise, in a conditional statement, again, you can ignore the two divisions of conjunctive and disjunctive. We didn't do those. But conditional itself can also be affirmative or negative, okay? So it can be a negation, where we say, if it rains, the ground will get wet, or we say, if it rains, the ground will not get wet, okay? Now over here, inshallah, we're going to do a couple of Quranic verses, and we're going to try to figure out if these are affirmative or negative. I've written the first verse in the chat. That's why the sister who said, is or is not is the deciding factor. This is why I meant, like, it's not always the is. There's other ways that you can convey that there's a relationship, an affirmative relationship as well. Okay. Okay, good. Okay, so this is from Surah Jathiyah. Okay. وَخَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ. Okay. Allah created the heavens and the earth in truth. Okay, so you can even ignore the bilhaq in truth. You don't even have to bring that. You can just say Allah created the heavens and the earth. So we're attributing the notion of, the heavens and the earth being created to the subject, which is Allah. Okay, Allah, what did He do? He created the heavens and the earth. Okay, He is the creator of heavens and earth. That's essentially what it is at its core. Allah is the creator of heavens and the earth, but we're conveying that through this statement, which is Allah created the heavens and earth. No, it's not conditional. It's not conditional. I'm not sure. Was there a reason why you said it's conditional? Maybe there was something in the statement. If it said Allah created the heavens or the earth, then it will become conditional. Okay. Okay. So the next verse we're going to do is Surah Hud, verse 75, which is this. Indeed, Ibrahim was forbearing, grieving, and frequently returning to Allah. That's the translator's explanation in the brackets. Okay, good. So what indicated that it's affirmative? What was there? What's that one? Yeah. The word was. Okay, so was is now the past tense of is. Okay, it's the past tense of is, but it's still conveying that notion of affirming something. We're saying Ibrahim was forbearing. Okay, it's not conditional. Ibrahim was forbearing, or he was, God-fearing. one of these, one or the other. It's not conditional. Saying no, it's an attributive statement. Okay. Okay, let's do one more. Let's do a couple more actually. No, I'm still on this slide. We're just doing examples right now, just so you guys can get a hang of this. So, أتل ما أوحي إليك من الكتاب وأقم الصلاة. Recite, O Muhammad, what has been revealed to you of the book and establish prayers. أحسنت. Okay, good. Yeah, this was a trick one. I threw that in on purpose. Just wanted to see. This is an insha. This is a command. There's actually two different command tenses, and therefore it is outside the discussion that we're having. This was an insha. How do we know it's an insha? Because it's giving a command tense. Recite and establish prayers. So you can't attribute this statement to truth being true or false. It's just a command tense, and therefore it doesn't fall into any of these divisions anymore. Okay, that was good. Okay, let's do this one. This one is good. No, establishing prayer is not affirmative because it's a command tense. It's saying aqim, yani go and establish the prayers. It's a command tense. Okay, let's look at this one. This is from Surah Yusuf. Yes, Kashif. It's conditional, but which one? Is it, we're asking if it's affirmative or if it's a negative. Okay, how did you figure that out? What is that one word that is conveying? Okay, is also true. There's one more. There's one more word. The one of the person, yeah. She has. Okay, Kashif, brother Kashif, the word then is only telling us that this is a conditional statement. The word then. Okay, the word then is not telling us if it's positive or negative. What is telling us that it's an affirmative is the word has. Then she has lied, and he is of the truthful. Okay, that's how we know that this is a conditional statement, which is affirmative. So this is a conditional proposition in the Quran. Okay, let's do one last one, and then we'll move to the next slide. I'll just post to English. Okay, good. Yeah, this one was simple. Indeed, prayer prohibits immorality and wrongdoings. إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر. And just one last one, just to finish it off. This one. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم. Insha. Okay, so we're giving sort of a command tense here. Okay, so dua, we're doing a dua to Allah, guide us on the right path, on the straight path. Therefore, it's not affirmative or it's not negative, it's nothing. It's just an insha. No, the previous one is not insha. It's actually a khabar. It's telling you prayer does prohibit. Yes, if through the if you can understand insha from the signification which is associative. Okay, you can come and say that when Allah is saying that salat, prevents you from doing sins, technically He's giving you a command tense saying go and pray. So the dalala of that statement, you can say, is a statement which is in insha, which is a command tense. And actually, this is very, very, very common, by the way. They say that it's an attributive proposition in the hukm of an insha, or sometimes they say it's a insha statement in the hukm, in the place of an attributive proposition. This happens a lot in the Quran, Hadith, and stuff. It's not something strange or anything. Okay, so I think like the subject and predicate is probably a bit clearer now, I'm guessing. Okay, in an attributive proposition, that's all we're working with now. This is now going to be a division, which they do in logic, and it may become clear why they do this division. So if you remember that every proposition, which is an attributive proposition, has a subject. Okay, Ali is tall. Ali is your subject. Humans are, I don't know, green. The word human is your proposition, so on and so forth. This is a division they're doing that, okay, what type of subjects can you have in a proposition? They say sometimes your proposition is particular. Okay? What do we mean by particular? Meaning it is a single instance of somebody. If I say Ali is tall, we're talking about a particular instance here of anything, like a fard. They say a fard. We're not talking about humans, we're not talking about generally humans or animals or humanity. We're not talking about these general concepts. We're talking about a single instance of something. Ali is tall. Stones are hard. Sorry, this stone is hard. Okay, anything that makes it singular and particular. Not stones. The word this, if I say this stone is hard, then it becomes particular. Okay? In logic, they're going to tell you we don't care about this one. Although for our purposes, for this intro class, it's good to know these ones. Why? Because we can actually make use of these regardless. Why do they say we don't care about this in logic? Is because the reason why they primarily study logic is because it's going to be useful in philosophy. And in philosophy, they don't care about particulars. Okay, we're trying to reach general principles in philosophy, therefore they won't necessarily care about this. But it's good to know this because we can still use this. We can still make use of these in our day-to-day activities. And if you want to argue with somebody, debate with someone, you can make use of these as well. So either it's a particular or it's a universal concept. Okay, so sometimes you may say animals are green, or animals are four-legged. I don't know, Asians are Chinese. Some Asians are Chinese. These are universals now. Okay, we're talking about universal concepts. Cats have tails. Okay, but now sometimes when you use a subject, okay, the universal subject, sometimes when you use a universal subject, you actually are just referring to the concept. Okay, that same concept that is in your mind, you're actually just talking about that. For example, if I say contradictions are impossible. Okay? Contradictions are impossible. Have you guys ever seen a contradiction in real life? If you say there's a contradiction, have you ever seen, for example, black and not black, the non-existence of black being there in a wall? Wait, that doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a contradiction in real life. So when you say a contradiction is impossible, you're referring to it through your concept. It's a concept in your mind that you're referring to. Okay. Or for example, if I say, sorry, you know what? This example is wrong. The one I just said is wrong. It should have been in the next one. Instance is implied. The concept implied is a better example to give is animal is a genus. Okay. Reason why it's wrong because when we say contradiction is impossible, we actually do mean a contradiction in the kharij is impossible. Otherwise, I can possibly do tasawwur of it. The law of contradiction itself has intense discussion. If it doesn't exist, then how are we conceptualizing it and so on and so forth. It wasn't a good example to use for this class anyways. A better example to use is saying animal is a genus. Okay, it's the same genus we discussed in the discussion of ta'rifat, in the discussion of definitions. Animal is a genus. Okay, which animal is a genus? This animal outside that I'm looking at, this monkey is a genus? No, this monkey is not a genus. The concept of animalness, okay, that is a genus. Okay, so the concept of it is a genus, not this animal outside. I'm not talking about this animal outside. Nobody goes around saying, "Oh, this animal here is a genus." Nobody says that. What they mean is the concept of it. Okay, so that's called tabi'iyya. But other times, and this is where we're discussing most of our propositions, is that we use a universal, but we're actually referring to its instances. So if I say animals have 4 legs, okay, or some animals have 4 legs, sometimes I can say a statement without indicating its quantity. And by quantity, guys, we don't necessarily mean a specific number. I can just come and say, some animals have 4 legs. Okay, that still means I gave you a quantity. So that's a quantitative proposition. Okay, or all animals have 4 legs, or no animal has 4 legs. Anytime I bring a no, some, all, maybe some of them, these words indicate a quantity. Okay, so I'm just saying this because we don't always mean a specific number. Sometimes the quantity is not known. Example, animals have 4 legs. Just this statement, animals is your subject. The instance is implied. Okay, I'm actually talking about animals outside, external reality. I'm not talking about the concept in my mind. But its quantity, I didn't make it clear. All animals, some animals, 20% of the animals, 50%. How many animals? I didn't make it clear. This is called muhmala. Okay, it's muhmal. The sentence is muhmal, meaning the quantity is not known. And sometimes the quantity is known. If I say all animals are 4-legged, some Asian people are Chinese people, the word some, it indicates quantity. Now when I say some Asians are Chinese, the word Asian is a subject, it's a universal, but its instance is implied. Okay, I don't mean the concept of Asians in my mind are Chinese. No, I mean actually Asian people outside, their instances, their misdaq, their masadiq, not the mafhum in my mind. Their masadiq, some of them are Chinese people. Okay, that's what we mean over here. And what they discuss primarily in logic is this last one, mahsura. That's the one they discuss primarily. Okay, but as I said, for our purpose, it's good to know all of them because we're gonna make use of them. Inshallah, I'm gonna actually even give homework to you guys today, just to watch a video on Facebook, a few minute video for next lesson. Mahsura basically means that you have a statement, and again, remember, it can either be affirmative or it can be negative, and the quantity is known. How do we convey the quantity? We say that it's either all or none. If it's all or none, we also call it a general mahsura statement, meaning all animals are 4-legged, or no animal is 4-legged. Whenever I bring words like these, that means I'm indicating a quantity here. This is called a kulli, general. Okay, general proposition, which is a mahsura. Mahsura means it's restricted in specific quantities. Or sometimes the mahsura is particular, meaning some Asian people are Chinese, some Pakistani people are tall, or a few people are tall. Not everybody is tall. Anything that negates the notion of all or none. these statements become particular, and then of course they have affirmative, negative, just like we mentioned before. Okay, so we're gonna ignore this. We're not gonna do that. We're not gonna do this. Okay, so now you're going to need your papers and pens. So we've done propositions, okay? Now we're gonna start making use of these propositions, and what we're gonna do. This is basically, look, what we're trying to do in logic is we're gonna take these propositions and we wanna be able to build arguments, we wanna be able to sort of learn something from these propositions, okay? There is so these are now different techniques to get to another piece of knowledge from a proposition, okay? And there's different ways to do this. Sometimes, one statement is enough for you, and from that one statement, you can take out different conclusions. And then in the next session, we're gonna say, for sometimes you need more than one proposition. You need two, maybe propositions. You make a premise out of them, premise one, premise two, and then you have a conclusion. That's gonna be next week. And this week we're discussing what you can do with just one proposition itself. Now there's multiple things we can do, but we're gonna go through only two of them. The first one is called al-aqsul mustawi, the equivalent conversion. Okay. What do we do over here? Okay. Any statement that you have a proposition which is attributive, hamiliya, okay, which is the one we're obviously covering. We know that it has a subject and a predicate, right? And it has the nisba as well, the copula. You basically take the subject and the predicate and you switch its place around. Okay, that's the first thing that you do. And you also are going to have to change the quantity of it. Okay, if it says all, it'll become some. The next slide will have the table, by the way. It'll say when do you change it to what. Okay. What is the rule? What is the point of this? If your original statement proposition is true, the equivalent conversion will be true as well. Okay. But if the equivalent conversion is false, that means the original was also false. Okay. So sometimes you may say all humans are animals. All humans are animals. Let's just assume you may think this is true, but after doing the equivalent conversion, if it says some animals are humans and you're like, you know what, no, they're not, then you know that the first one is false as well. All humans are animals, that was a false statement. You can sort of discover that. So if you have a paper and pen, just take this down, write this down. All humans are animals, make the arrows the way I've made them, and so we can move on to the next slide. We're going to do practice. We're going to practice with these. Okay. Okay. Let me just show you this previous slide one more time. So remember this. We said a proposition is either a general or it's a particular, meaning it's either all or none. Anything that has all, none, it indicates a complete sort of quantity. We're going to be calling it a general, and every general has an affirmative and a negative. And some statements are particular, meaning some, a few, not all, juz'i. We're going to be calling them particular statements, and they have affirmative and negative. Okay. So now let's go to the next slide that we had, which is here. This is just a chart that tells you that if you have, depending on what statement you have, what is its equivalent conversion going to be. Now, when we study logic, each of these, we need to bring proof for this. Like, how are you saying that? How do we know that if it's a general affirmative, it becomes a particular affirmative, so on and so forth? They're lengthy, like we have to prove all of these, and we prove them, when we study them in depth and whatnot. So obviously for our class, I'm just going to tell you what it is. One thing I think some of you will get confused with, because when we were doing it the first time, we were confused as well. Actually, let us get to it, and it'll become clear what that confusion is going to be. Okay. When you have a general affirmative proposition, The examples are at the bottom, by the way. Okay. Sorry. One other thing I want to mention is that uh, this slide also has a mistake, which I fixed it on my slide that I have, but this one didn't have. This one was not updated. But I'll clarify that when we get to it. The first statement is general affirmative. So we said the word general means it's inclusive. Okay, meaning either the word all is going to come or none, anything that includes, all the instances of that universal, of that subject. So we're saying all humans. Then we're saying that it's affirmative. Okay, we're going to affirm something, which we're going to use the word are. All humans are animals. When it's general affirmative, its equivalent conversion is going to be particular affirmative, which means that the word all is going to turn into some, or any word that indicates less than all, basically, some of them. And you're going to switch the subject and the predicate. You're going to switch them around. Okay. Does this make sense? Does this one make sense? Did you guys, if you're writing it down, let me know if it's making sense. Because when we do the examples, you're probably going to have to write them down when we do the examples. Okay. If you have, so that was the first one. Second one, if you have a particular affirmative, so particular means that we're not talking about all the instances of that subject, but some of them. Its equivalent conversion is going to be a particular affirmative as well, but with the exchange of the subject and the predicate. We're going to switch the subject and predicate around. If I say some students are studious, they study well, its equivalent conversion will be some studious individuals are students. Okay? Some studious students are students. That was the second one. Third one is that when you have a general negative. Okay, let's see if anyone can figure out what the mistake is. This example that I've given is mistaken. This is from old slides. I made a mistake while writing these down. This one has a mistake in the example that I've given. What is the mistake in this? General negative, okay, meaning it's a proposition that should be negating something. So I've written no Shia is a Sunni. Is this actually a negative or an affirmative? Yeah. Okay, so this is actually an affirmative. And according to this chart that I've given, which type of affirmative is it? The first one, correct. Yes, correct. Why? Because no indicates that no instance of a Shia is a Sunni. No, it's not particular. Particular would mean that it is not inclusive of all of the instances. But because I put in the word no Shia, no Shia, I didn't say some Shia or, less than, 100% Shia. No, I said no Shia, meaning no instance of a Shia that you have is a Sunni. So it's actually a general affirmative. So this is a wrong example that I've given here. Okay, what would be a better example is one now. Would be if I say every Shia is not a Sunni. Every Shia is not a Sunni. Okay? What will be the equivalent conversion for that according to the chart? So no Sunnis are Shia is correct. Okay, it's correct. But the way you write it is also important. The actual statement should be every Sunni is not a Shia. Then through the dalala, the signification that we discussed last week, and we said one of them is association. Through that, you figured out, okay, this basically means no Sunni is a Shia. But no Sunni is a Shia is not a negative statement. It's an affirmative statement. So the way you write it is also important. Why is it important? It'll become clear next week when we do the Burhan and stuff, when we try to build an argument. Okay, so this was that. Let's do a couple of practice questions. Okay, in the Quranic verse, إن بعد الظن إثم. Some dhuns, some speculations are sins. What is the al-aqsul mustawi for this? Yeah, so you don't have to tell me if it's particular or affirmative. I want you to figure that out yourself and just tell me the actual proposition. What will it be? So some speculations are sins. Yes, it is particular affirmative. Its equivalent will also be the same. But what will be the conclusion? What will the proposition be? It will become some sins are speculation. Okay? Yeah, some sins are dhan. Yes. And we know that's true. Okay? Some sins that exist in reality, some instances of sins that exist happen to be dhan. Okay? And that's a true statement. Okay. Now a little bit more lengthy. See if you can, break this up even. This is the Prophet's words to Amir al-Mu'mineen. What did the Prophet say? He said, no believer will hate you. Okay? And the second statement is, and no hypocrite will love you. So these are technically two statements. You can do the first one first and the second one after that. So you have to identify which one is it. Is it particular affirmative, general negative, and if whatever it is, and what is the equivalent conversion for that? So Kashif, all leaders love you is, again, it's you figured that out through the signification of that statement. What you're saying is that it signifies that all believers are going to be lovers, which is correct. But that is not the equivalent conversion for that proposition. So what some of the brothers and sisters wrote, that no hater is a believer, that's actually the correct way of writing it. No hater of Amir al-Mu'mineen is a believer, and no lover of Amir al-Mu'mineen is a hypocrite. Okay? What about this one? Every believer is a Muslim. Yeah, it's some. Some Muslims are believers. Okay? Every believer is a Muslim is a general affirmative. Its particular affirmative will become some Muslims are believers, which is also true. So if either one of these is true, we know the other one is going to be true. Okay? And if we figure out that the equivalent conversion is false, then we know that the yes, yes, yes. You can, if you really want to make, I mean, we're just sticking, it's just the raw proposition that we're dealing with right now. In real life, and when you're discussing and stuff, yeah, you're going to have a lot of different qualities and conditions and whatnot being mentioned in these statements. Okay, let's do the last one. A little bit trickier. Hadith, right, of Imam Ali, that every day when one does not sin, or every day, any day that there is no sin in, is a day of Eid. This is a little bit trickier, but I think you guys can figure it out. No. So why are you guys saying every day? Because every day is going to be general. Yeah, so it's conversion is going to be particular. So you have to change the word every day into, some days. Yeah, so you say some days of Eid. Yeah. So the sister said it correctly. Some days of Eid are days that one doesn't sin in. Okay? That's actually the equivalent conversion of that. Okay. I think that was enough. I have a couple other examples, like I have man kuntum mawla fahada alim. I have those as well. But I just want to finish the slides, inshallah. We don't have too much left now. So that was your equivalent conversion. Another thing you can do from just one single proposition is you can figure out its contradiction. Okay? What is the contradiction of a statement? So obviously this is based on the law of non-contradiction, which says that, two sort of contradictory statements, their instances can't exist and not exist at the same time. You can't have something, like a wall, which is black and not black at the same time. Okay, at the exact same time, from any perspective that you want to, consider. You can't have that. But how do we derive that from a statement, from just one proposition? How do we figure that out? We're gonna, in the next slide, we'll discuss that. But what is the rule here? What do we know? We say that the truth of one of the proposition implies the falsehood of the other one. Okay? Both can't be true and both can't be false at the same time. Simple law of non-contradiction. Okay? You can't have two contradictory statements that are true at the same time or false at the same time. One of them has to be true and the other one has to be false. How do we derive these? Okay, so just like the last slide, I have over here. So over here is going to be a little bit different. Over here, if you have a general affirmative, its contradiction will become a particular negative. Okay, one easy thing I can tell you here is that whatever you have on the proposition side, okay, in its contradiction, it will change. If it's general in your proposition, then the contradiction will be particular. If it's affirmative, then the contradiction will be negative. Okay, so in that sense, it's easy to memorize this chart. It's easy to memorize this one. So if we say all humans are animals, which is a general affirmative statement. Okay? All humans are animals. Its contradiction will be some humans are not animals. And if you notice, we're not changing the subject and the predicate here. We don't have to do that. Okay, we don't even have to do that over here. That was just in the ux that we were talking about. Over here, you just bring the subject down, predicate down. All you're really changing are the quantity and the nisba. Okay, all you're changing is all becomes into some, and are becomes into are not, or is becomes into is not. If you have a particular affirmative, like saying some students are studious, it will become a general negative, saying all students are not studious. That's a contradiction. How can some students be, serious in their studies, and then you say no student is serious, is not studious? Okay. If I say a general negative, no, so once again, the same mistake is here as in the previous slide, the example. A general negative should be, every Shia is not a Sunni. Every Shia is not a Sunni. Then I come and say, some Shias are Sunnis. That's also now a contradiction. And then the last one is a particular negative, which some Muslims are not just. And then I say all Muslims are just. They have justice. Okay, that's not going to work either. Before we do examples for this, I just want to go through the last two slides, and then we'll come back to it. Come back to this so you can do the practice ones that I have. There are certain conditions that need to be met for it to be a true contradiction. Okay? Your two propositions need to be different in a couple of things. First of them is the quantity. Okay? Whatever quantity that you've mentioned in one proposition, it has to be different in the other one. If I say every animal is a human, my contradictory statement has to say some animals are not humans. Okay, so the quantity has to be different. You can't say every animal is a human, say every animal is not human. No. It actually needs to be different. What else needs to be different is the sort of the quality and the nisba. Okay, so this is obviously straightforward. If I say every human is an animal, I have to say some humans are not animal. Okay, are not. So I have to change the nisba. This is not so difficult. This is not so complicated. What is complicated is this. Okay, and this is where it really gets, you can commit fallacies. So this happens in philosophy. Sometimes someone will come and say that, these two statements are contradictory. But, another philosopher will come and say, you know what, you forgot to realize that they're not contradictory because, the seventh condition on this chart, it doesn't meet the seventh condition, for example. So for this, you have to be really, really, precise, and you have to pay a lot of attention to the propositions. But again, this is just an introductory class. We don't have to concern too much. I just want to introduce you that, look, for something to be a real contradiction in the real, philosophical sense, it has to be this. The two propositions need to be united in nine things, sorry. If I say that a human is rational, my contradiction the subject of it, the mawdu, can't be different. I have to have the exact same subject, meaning if I say a human is rational, I can't say the horse or some horses are not rational. Where does the word horse come from? You change the subject. Okay? You change the subject. Likewise, the predicate also has to be the same. If I say humans are rational, I can't say some humans are not a barking animal. I changed my predicate, mahmul. Like I was talking about being rational, and now it's talking about a barking animal or a mooing animal, some animal that moves or meows or whatever. That's not a contradiction. Okay, the zaman has to be same. Okay, to the time. Okay, if I say the moon was in a state of eclipse, at the time of withdrawal, or at noon time or whatever, I mentioned a specific time, and then my contradiction says, it was eclipsing at some other time. Okay, that's not contradiction. The makan, the space that I'm talking about, has to be the same. If I say Zayd is standing in the house, and I say Zayd is not standing in the market, okay, wait, you change the place. The house and market it's not a contradiction. Okay. By the way, you may look at these and be like, look, this is a contradiction. Zayd can't be standing in the house and not standing in the market. So what I'm trying to say here is that sometimes through the dalala that I spoke about, that signification, sometimes you may realize that, look, the signification of a different statement does convey that this is a contradictory statement. But that, because that is through a signification, right, through dalala, we don't say that that specific proposition is a contradiction. Yes, its implication could be a contradiction, but not the proposition itself. If it gets a little bit complicated, don't worry. I'm just mentioning this for those who can understand it. They can take it. Otherwise, it's not something that you have to worry too much. Number 5, we can ignore. 6, you can ignore. 7 is just condition. Okay. If I say it is obligatory to honor Zayd if he comes, and then I say it is not obligatory to honor Zayd if he does not come. Okay, like I changed the condition. That's not a contradiction. Okay, Allah, Zayd is the most learned person of Iraq, and then I say Zayd is not the most learned person of Yemen. Okay, you change the person of Yemen. That's the idafa that we're talking about here. And the 9th one is not relevant for this class. Okay, so these were I just mentioned these for, what's it called, just to get an exposure. But let's go back to the examples. And this is what's more important. So, idafa is actually, like if I say book of Ali's book, that's basically idafa. So over this example was, someone from Yemen. Something that is added on to something. It's from Arabic grammar. That's why I don't want to explain that too much. Let's go through these examples. Okay. Surah Qalam. The verse says, indeed he is mad. Yeah, it's simple. This is simple. The only thing that is going to throw you guys off is the fact that we discussed mahsurat. Remember, we were discussing general and particular and whatnot. But in the slides before that, I said, look, sometimes we're talking about specific individuals. And in philosophy, they may not care about it. But I said we're going to need that for our example. Over here, the verse which says, indeed, he is mad. Okay, he is mad is not any of these propositions, by the way. It's not mahsura. We're not talking about a general concept here. We're talking about one individual, which is, this is the disbelievers talking about the Prophet, right? But I said you can still make use of those propositions. You can actually make use of them. And actually the contradiction of this verse is in the Quran itself. So Allah will come and He'll say a contradictory statement to negate these guys. Okay? But Takwir, it says, وَمَا صَاحِبُكُمْ بِمَجْنُونَ. So the disbelievers are saying, إِنَّهُ لَمَجْنُونَ. The Prophet is mad. And then the other verse says, your companion, meaning him, the Prophet, is not mad. This is a contradiction. One of these statements is true. Either the quote of the disbelievers is true or what Allah is saying is true. Both can be true at the same time, both can be false at the same time. One of them is true. So this is now sort of Allah is bringing this statement in a different verse to show you that the statement of the disbelievers is not true. Okay, this one should be easier to do. كل نفس ذائقة الموت. Every soul shall taste death. What is going to be the contradictory statement for this? Okay, good. Yeah. So كل نفس ذائقة الموت, its contradiction is going to become every soul shall not taste death. So you're going to be like, okay, wait, that's contradicting. Which of these is correct? Okay. If you know one of them is true, then you know the other one is going to be false for 100%, for sure. Right? Okay. I want to show you how sometimes you can be confused. Because sometimes people use statements and on the apparent level they seem like contradictions, but sometimes they're not. So can you say every soul shall not taste? Would that be? So look, that would be a contradiction through its implication. Because what does the statement every soul shall not taste death mean? It also implies that some souls shall not taste death. But the actual contradiction is in the statement some soul shall not taste death, not in every soul shall not. I don't want to mention this, but basically what the sister is saying, there's a debate between the logicians. Some of them say, why can't the statement be a contradiction? The one that she's saying. Because it's a debated thing, I don't want to bring it in this class. Some books of logic will consider this to be a actual contradiction as well. So it's good that you're thinking about this. But because I want to just stick with what the mainstream books discuss, I didn't want to bring this up. But this is actually a debate, and many of them will say that yes, that's also a contradiction, direct contradiction. But some will say that no, through the implication of this statement, we know that it's a contradiction. Because what is the implication and the dalala of this? Every soul shall not taste death. Every soul shall not taste death also implies that some souls shall not taste death, which is our contradiction, and therefore we do not. Therefore, this is also a contradiction. But because I wanted to stay sort of mainstream, I didn't want to go into that. Look at this. Okay, so the Ash'ari, which is pretty much mainstream Sunnis today, sometimes you're gonna see them say God cannot be seen, and then some of them will say God can be seen. You will see them in their words. Okay, if you talk to a Sunni today, you say, "Can you see God?" They'll say, "No, of course you can't see God." But then one of their beliefs is also that God can and will be seen. Ahsant. Good. So if you remember the last slide that I showed you, the unity thing, and what things that the proposition have to be united for it to be a true contradiction, one of them was makan, okay? The space or the place where this proposition is taking place. When they say God cannot be seen, they mean he can't be seen in this world. Okay? And when they say God can be seen and will be seen, that's their belief. Obviously, we don't agree with. They mean that he can be seen in the next world, in the Day of Judgment. Okay? So these two statements, if they happen to make them, they're not actually contradictions. Okay? So we shouldn't say you're contradicting yourself. No, they're not. Because they actually imply two different places where this proposition is being spoken about. Okay? I think this is it. What I'm gonna do now is give you a couple of questions, like verses, which you guys can practice with. Uh, oh, it doesn't copy paste properly, but I think if you copy it and just paste it on like a Word file or a Notepad file, you can you can maybe able to see it properly. So I've mentioned a couple of verses. Okay, go and figure out if they're hamliya or shartiya, if they're attributive or they're conditional statements. Okay, from the verses itself, and then try to practice doing their, the equivalent conversion and their contradiction. Try to practice with these because they're gonna. That's the only way to learn this. By the way, you're gonna have to practice. Okay, and then for next session, where we're gonna start building arguments. Okay, before we do that, for next week, I want you guys to watch this video. Okay, for those of you who don't know, Raza Aslan, he's, I guess an academic, or if you want, yeah, he's an academic, and he's written some books and stuff, problematic books. This is one of his videos. Okay, just go watch it. If you don't know him, that's good. Just watch the video and see what he says. This is for next class, by the way. The video is for next class. Watch it. Try to write down. If you have a problem with what he's saying, write it down, okay? And try to figure out what is the exact problem that you see in his statements. Okay, when you watch it, you'll see what he's saying. If you don't have a problem, then maybe we can discuss on the side. If you have a problem with what he's saying, try to write it down, because what do we want to do in logic? We want to be able to read someone and study someone or hear someone's argument or words, be able to understand them in a argument. Okay, we're trying to see what is this person's argument, and then find the flaw in their argument. Okay, that's going to be the next class, which we're going to focus on. So, brother, one of the things I was saying is that he is mad. Okay, look, let me just turn the slide back to this slide. Okay? That statement is the first one, shakhsiyya. Subject is particular and it's shakhsiyya. The charts that I was showing you were concerning the last one, which is mahsura. And the reason why I was showing you this is because, as I said, in logic, they only care about the last one, which is the mahsura, which is, subject is universal, instance is implied, quantity is known, and is mahsura. They care about that because they're going to be using these premises in philosophy, where they generally only care about universals. Okay, but the example, he is mad, is from shakhsiyya, the first one. And I said some of these rules can be used even over there. Okay, you don't have to be able to use them elsewhere. If you're gonna use them in shakhsiyya, then all you need to change is the kayfiyya, basically. Okay, just as I said, there's different purposes for why you're gonna be studying logic. One of them sometimes for philosophy. The main purpose that I wanted to do here is for the next session, for us to be able to take statements like the Raza Aslan video, for example, and really be able to decipher them and figure out, okay, what is a person's argument and how can we critique his argument? Okay, how can we take someone's argument, put it into a premise, and then say, okay, this is the problem with his premise. Okay, and then for practice, that's why I'm bringing a lot of Quranic verses. Not all of them are following this specific chart, but you can still use some of the tools that we've learned to apply them over here. As I said, like, my time was not too much. Like, I only had a few hours, and that's why I couldn't go in too much detail, and I had to even skip a lot of stuff. But for the time being, this should be sufficient for the brothers and sisters. Inshallah, in the future, if we have more time and more time, we can even spend a lot of time on each of these specific slides. So I'm done, inshallah. If there's any questions, then feel free to ask them. But please make sure you watch the video because we want to be able to um critique it next week just by looking at, okay, what was this guy's argument and how can we critique someone when someone makes claims and someone builds an argument. What is the way to critique them and argue against them? Yeah, so it's being recorded, and inshallah they'll put it up on the website.